you all had some time to refresh and network a bit, both here in Berlin at the Kulturbrauerei, but also online in the networking sessions. So we are absolutely thrilled. This morning, everything went absolutely brilliantly. We had almost no technical issues, and we saw it's working. Hybrid conference, citizen science and SDG, that's a match made in heaven. So we are really super happy to welcome here everybody at the Kulturbrauerei and you online. And this afternoon, we are now starting with 3 exciting plenary talks. And the first one will be Muki, who most of you know, probably. He's quite a name in the scene of citizen science, and he was also part of the very informative plenary session, the panel discussion this morning. So Muki is a professor of geographical information science, and he is also the co-director of the Extreme Citizen Science Group at the Department of Geography at UCL. He is also the co-vice chair at EXA, and during the past years and months, he made quite a stir-up by talking and discussing the characteristics of citizen science. So he is asking, what is citizen science actually? And hopefully he can dwell a bit on this in his talk. And I'm very happy to have you here, Muki, and the stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Silke. So what we'll start is with a bit of what is challenging, why is it challenging to define citizen science, then the need for a common ground, then the developing, we'll see in our 3rd chapter about how to develop a common ground, and finally we'll see how the characteristic document is actually helping us to deal with these issues. So the first question is, why is it challenging to define citizen science? So what we will do is that we'll start with a story, and you can all go to Mentimeter at menti.com, put in this code, and give your own view. So let's look at this case. Eric is a teacher in Uppsala, Sweden, and for the past 15 years, he has been running a weather station that is part of the Weather Underground's personal weather station network with over 250,000 participants across the world who share their observation data, just like Eric. In return to the data sharing, the company is providing tech support, data management services, and customized free to forecast. The company uses the data to produce global weather forecast as a commercial service. So would you call this activity a citizen science? And if you go to Mentimeter, you can now make your choice. So while you are starting to think about it, let's think what is going on. Citizen science was kind of defined, and we have this definition from the Oxford English Dictionary, which is providing description of different things, and it called it in 2014 scientific work undertaken by members of the general public, often in collaboration with or under the direction of professional scientists and scientific institutions. Sounds great and really good definition, and the more you think about it, the often, for example, is really good because it allows for engaged activity and so on. However, think more and you realize that actually the word research should have been there, because otherwise social science, engineering, and arts and humanities will be missing. What about the word professional scientist? What does that mean? And what happened to civil society organizations, NGOs, which are really central to citizen science? Okay, so let's look at another one. This one is now coming from the American Citizen Science and Crowdsourcing Act. So this is a legal document. This has gone through a lot of work with the support of the Wilson Center in Washington, and it's kind of give us different definitions. So you see even A, B, C, D of defining exactly what it is that people are involved in enabling formulation of research question, creating and refining project design, conducting the research, and so on. Really carefully designed definition with the federal government. However, as Lee Shanley frequently point out, This definition has got a problem. It's not always remembering social sciences and engineering, which is important within the different areas, is also missing. So where is the problem? Why is it so tricky? And the reason that it's so tricky is that science in the 21st century is a huge enterprise. It's millions of scientists in many, many disciplines doing different things. And different areas of science are having different worldviews, what's in philosophy called ontologies. They got forms of knowledge production, which is what you'd call epistemology. And they also what account to data and how you analyze it, the methodology. And let's just look at an example of that from biomedicine. So area that in terms of what the worldview is, it's researching focused on health, understanding how to develop better medicine, and so on. And the knowledge production is done by intervening in the situation and then seeing what the results are. And the main tool that's being used in biomedical research is called randomized control trial, or RCTs for short. One group where you've done the intervention, another group which is the control group, and then you can compare it. Any other forms of knowledge production within biomedicine is seen as less than RCT. RCT is, in that area, the gold standard. So let's look at how citizen science look in this area. In 2008, a group of patients suffering from ALS found out that there was a study with a very small group in Italy, about 30 patients, where there was some promising results with use of lithium to slow down the progression of the disease. They were discussing it on their forum and then deciding that they are going to go to their doctor, get their prescription, and do the experiment. PatientsLikeMe, on the other hand, help them to identify people that match them in terms of the progression of the disease and kind of allow the creation of a randomized control trial by doing that. Unfortunately, lithium doesn't work in this case, and this experiment actually allowed them to demonstrate it. But what it demonstrates is, A, it's one of the rare examples of bottom-up RCTs. There aren't huge numbers of them. And the second thing, the production of knowledge had to be in RCT in order to be accepted by the field. So this is where the problem is. Now let's think about why do we need the common ground? What's the problem? So we have those different disciplines. Each discipline will decide on its own. So the issue is that there are different actors. We just heard in the policy panel about the wish to increase the use of citizen science. And now we have different situations where you have, say, citizen science platform that require, for example, which project to include or exclude. You have funding bodies that you just heard, again, the DG Research, for example, would want to come out with calls and then to decide if a project is actually claiming to be citizen science. Is it really? And then scientists who want to get into citizen science and want to know, is what they are doing really deserve to be called citizen science within their own discipline? And then there is also participants, people who are interested in different types of citizen science, who want to know if something is called citizen science, can I trust it? How can I tell that something is appropriate? So those things are actually require us to think about common building blocks despite of these big differences. And the terminology is also very difficult, and you just have your example of the practices in different disciplines. And exactly because of this richness of discipline, we have all this huge terminology from volunteer geographical information to community-based participatory research. I just thrown in a whole list of terminologies that are there in different fields, and they have a reason why they have. So if you start comparing them, you will find it. And in my specific area, for years, the people who were doing participatory GIS and public participation GIS were arguing exactly what's the meaning of those two practices. Of course, also the participants themselves, as the paper by Eitzel et al. Was demonstrating, also have an issue about how you call them and which terminology you should use. And we have things like the EXA 10 principles that are providing us the best guide of what to do when you have a citizen science project. But when we're trying to use that to say if something is citizen science, we don't get far enough. So actually, we have the need for the common building blocks, but we don't still have them. And we have controversies. Like, there are areas where you can find the controversies in the literature. For example, what active engagement mean? What do we mean by that? Is me running a World Community Grid while on the train from Paris considered to be citizen science activity? Is me, again, going around and checking the facts as part of Google local guides is a citizen science activity? Because I'm checking facts. I'm not just checking nothing. And then, what's the role of money? And what's the role of incentives in different things? What do we mean by when we mean volunteers? So those things are actually quite important. And that leads us to your next interaction. So here, another story for you and another Mentimeter question. And you'll see, I will share all the results in the session afterwards because there are some technical limitations of what we can do during this talk. So Jane is a member of the charity British Trust of Ornithology. And she cares about birds. She's an active supporter of the Garden Birdwatch program and happy to give the £17 a year subscription fee. However, she doesn't have the time to carry out the birdwatching survey itself. So she's reading with interest about the reports, about the BTO Garden Birdwatch, and find the information motivating and continue support to the project. So will you call this activity citizen science? Okay? Think about it. Again, those of you on Mentimeter are actually seeing now the question about what do you think about Jane activity, and you can think about your view on that. So now, those of you on Mentimeter actually seen some idea about what we were doing and how you would think about a pluralistic understanding of what is and what is not citizen science. Because what we actually, the things that are absolutely not citizen science, we know that the census is not citizen science. It involves all the population, we ask them questions, but actually it's a top-down. People ask questions, need to answer them. We have surveyors that don't have participation apart from being subjects of the answers. So that's not. There are things that are absolutely our citizen science, but what happened in between? This is the area that is marked in red, is the area that we actually need to pay attention to. To understand this area, what we need to do is, first of all, identify factors that influence a decision about it. Then, based on those issues, and the controversies are already hinting us toward this direction, we can develop vignettes. Those are really short stories to explore the factor within a typical context, because just asking about the factors will give us very polarized views, but we won't be able to understand how those, all the issues that I raised, the disciplinary differences, the epistemologies, the ontologies, all these things are influencing something. So we need to tell the story within a context. The next thing, we'll ask people, as a lot of people have done here, to grade between 0, not citizen science, to 100, it is citizen science, with each of the topics that we looked at. And then reach out to different people in research, science communication, policy, and public to get a wide range of views so we can see where are the agreement, where are the disagreement, and kind of follow that consensus view from the community, but a pluralistic view. It's not consensus in that sense. It's more the pluralism. So the factors that we were looking at, you can see some of the examples. We had 10 main factors and 60 sub-factors, starting with areas of ambiguity and looking at them. For example, the activeness. So you see, for example, in the table over there, you can see that active, for example, is not marked as controversial. So if you are actively engaged, cognitively engaged, nobody will argue about it. But if you are just semi-active, so you are just carrying out a micro-task, then maybe some people will disagree with you. And then passive engagement, whatever that means in different contexts, is also something that can lead to controversies. And then, then you have the different factors, so the factors that we're using: activeness, compensation, the issue of money that I've raised around, because as you can see some examples of it, issues like education, or is it a game, has been shown to be somewhat controversial. Purpose of the knowledge production, professionalism, and the involvement of professional actors within the citizen science itself, training of the participants, the data sharing element of the project, the leadership, who leads the project. Is it an NGO? Is it a researcher? Is it community members? Or is it just an individual doing their own things on their own time? And the scientific field and involvement in different stages of the process. So that allows us, with those 60 factors, to actually develop those different vignettes. And out of them, 40 are absolutely within those different factors and allow us to explore them. And all the controversies within the factors that we identify. Next thing, we had 5 factors that we took from the literature on cases that are well published within the literature. So say a case like Galaxy Zoo and the discovery of a specific element by a volunteer, a Dutch school teacher named Hanni von Erkel. Or on the other end of the spectrum, looking at clinical trials, which are usually not considered to be citizen science. So that's the different cases. The survey design, we basically took insights from crowdsourcing. So we said some people might answer just one example and walk away. Some people might do 10 because we estimated it will take you about 10 minutes to do 10 examples. We expected a lot of people to do the 10. And then we said almost nobody will do the 50 because to do that, it will take you about an hour and a half of sitting with the survey and going and doing it. And as you can see, also the form allows you to say why you have made these decisions. So we have a context. That was optional, it wasn't mandatory, and we just open it up. We expected to have about 10 votes for each area in order to get an indication, but to our surprise, this thing worked really well. And that's a lesson about engaging people with survey, maybe with the vignette, actually made people very interested. We had, as you expect, and this is a common image to anyone who's done crowdsourcing, but with a bit of a difference. You actually have here 42 people who done the whole survey and gave us an indication of everything. You have quite a big group that done above 10, and you have then some people that done 1 and some people that done absolutely nothing, which is also common from crowdsourcing. So we had 333 people who responded. And they come from different places. So now we are counting actually the answers. And you can see a good representation from Europe, Germany, for example. You can see here we had a good somewhere at the top. We also, to our surprise and delight, got a really good balance between people that are coming from research, just about half, and people that are coming from different areas. And I'm counting by the answers because you need to connect the person to the answer and the variability of the different answers. So here are the results from all the survey. And what was interesting is that actually to notice the divergence and the pluralistic view that is existing within the community. We didn't have a really clear group of things that will fall absolutely within citizen science, but almost in everything you would see, I would point to you several things. Eric, for example, as you can see, a lot of people think that it is citizen science, but there is a huge range of views about is it or is it not. And it was the commercial element that we've seen in the text, people commenting. Jane, on the other hand, was the clearest cut example of not citizen science. And I can tell you that in your own vote, actually, it's very close to it. And the level of confidence is actually quite high also on this area. But a lot of areas, actually, when you see things like that, where the 50, the middle is very high, it means that people couldn't decide if it is or isn't. And then you have it also the cases that are absolutely our citizen science and the cases that are absolutely not citizen science, and they didn't stand out that clearly. So that survey now provided us the input to create a document that now you can see the extra characteristics of citizen science. And the survey is clarified a range of views and allow us to actually develop it. And the point is to not to describe, everything that is citizen science, but identifying areas that require attention and guidance. And when you're designing your definition, you need to think about them. Attention to ensure that existing definitions that exist on different platforms can be accommodated. And the guidance is broken into different areas. So let's go quickly through them and finish the talk with that. Still be on time. The core concept area is about that can if something is or is not citizen science. So we're going to pick up one area, is what the type of research. And we are pointing out that there are multiple defining what research is. It can be hypothesis-driven, but it also can be something that it's monitoring the situation. It can be an inductive research, it can be exploratory, and it can be even database creation activity. So within that, and under certain condition, my Google local guides can be considered. The disciplinary aspects are highlighting the different issues for specific disciplines. And we expect this area to grow, but at the moment we identify issues within science and technology, within arts and humanities, social science, and in medical research and human health. We also notice things about leadership and participation, so the different types of bodies that can lead citizen science projects. And there was a special issue that came out in the survey about what happened when a commercial for-profit body is running citizen science project, and we're pointing out in the document what the condition. They need to work harder on the 10 principles in order to be considered that they are doing citizen science properly. Financial aspects, as you have seen yourself, is an issue, and we kind of discuss when you can consider those different aspects, so financial support for scientific research, payment and incentive for participants, and then also the whole issue of data and knowledge on how these things fit within open science and who owns the data, what aspects of data quality need to be considered, and so on. The document, the document is actually made of the main document, which is fairly short, so it can be used within policy processes or within panels and other situations like that, whereas there is also a longer explanation notes that help you into what we mean by the main documents and can be used in different contexts. So we provide those two things. On that, you can find it on Zenodo by looking for the extra characteristics. And there is already applications of them. They are used within EU Citizen Science Platform to decide which project resources and training will be integrated when we need to decide if a training resource is useful for citizen science. It's already been used by national funders, so the UK Research and Innovation came out with a call for citizen science project, and they pointed the applicants to the document. The vignettes already been used both in Austria and in Israel for training purposes and class discussion about the aspects of citizen science. And there is plenty of potential for further analysis of the results. So in summary, citizen science is difficult to define. There is no way around it. And it's because of the issues that we raised that the definition need to fit for purpose. There's not going to be a simple definition that will cover all ground. So it's takes socio-disciplinary practices to socioeconomic condition on the ground, condition of participants, everything else. And we need to be aware that we might need different definitions for different sustainable development goals. So through a pluralistic approach, you can identify a common ground, and there is much more to explore within the study and using the vignettes. Like, for example, it will be fascinating to translate them to different European languages and see how different communities around Europe are viewing what citizen science is. So that's it about what is citizen science anyway, and I hope that it was illuminating. Thank you very much.
So thanks so much, Muki. I think we do now a little bit better what citizen science could be anyway, and I would now like to open the ground to questions. So Miguel Madrid is asking, what is extreme citizen science and why?
It's come from the extremities of citizen science. And what we're trying to do in the group is trying to take citizen science, and in particular, we are working with marginalized groups and arguing that when we will be able to run citizen science with communities that are non-literate or illiterate, we will reach the extremities of citizen science because we also involve them in all the stages of the process, from definition to analysis of the result. We haven't got there completely yet. We're still working on it. We'll continue to work on it for a long time.
Oop. So I hope I'm still being heard despite these interesting noises here. So Annette is asking a really interesting question. So she is wondering whether you could show us the results of the Mentimeter that you just did.
Yes, I will show them in the expert, and I will share them on Twitter immediately after this talk. I can't. The technical limitations of this hybrid conference mean that I couldn't do it live. I actually intended to share them with the results. Not surprisingly, I can tell you that you are very close to what was going on with the survey itself.
So excellent. So I think I would like to invite everybody to later on join Muki's Meet the Expert session. So he is actually going to be here in Berlin, and he's going to answer all the questions that you would like to direct to him in the Meet the Expert question. And I think with this, we are perfect on time, and I would very much like to thank you, Muki, for your very inspiring talk. And I hope everybody now knows what citizen science is anyway. Thank you.
Thank you.